Good morning, guys. Thank you for joining us this morning. We are the Property Angels. We're three former professional ladies who have left our corporate careers and now pursue our property and business interests. And we are here this morning with Brynley Little, and we are interviewing Brynley and in the hope we can share some inspiration, motivation and knowledge to you guys this morning. If I can first introduce my fellow hosts. Karen, do you want to introduce yourself first?
So, good morning. My name's Karen Stanbridge, and I originally started life as an accountant. Well, somebody has to, right? I then went on to work as a project and program manager and strategic business consultant in Big Blue Chip. My bread and butter for some 25 years was creating get-fit plans and running war rooms and sorting out businesses in distress. And now I bring that knowledge helping small businesses in the property industry. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Karen. Hi, my name is Sam Beddoe. I have a couple of property companies. One is in service accommodation. The other one is in property development. That one's called Revive Holdings. After 23 years as a career as a police detective, I felt that the work-life balance was not there, and that's why I came into property. And yeah, it's such a contrast, but I'm enjoying it. It's great. Over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, my name's Sarah Smith. I bought my first property in 2004, not to be a landlord, just to buy the property and live in it basically. And then 2 years later, my broker suggested I could keep that property. The rent would pay the mortgage and I could buy another one. So I did that every couple of years, which started my property investing career. Meanwhile, I followed a traditional path, training to be a solicitor, which I did for 8 years. And when my property income overtook what I earn as a solicitor, I went full-time property. I've done lots of different property strategies, but mainly focusing now on vanilla single lets and maintaining my current portfolio, which is largely HMOs. Also host Partners in Property with these lovely ladies. So welcoming Bryn this morning, I'll pass you over to Karen.
Yes, as you can see, we have Brynley Little with us and we're absolutely delighted. So Bryn is a third generation developer, bringing with him absolutely solid foundations and tons of experience. And I'd like to start by asking Bryn.
HMOs. Also host Partners in Property with
your granddad and your father, being experienced property developers, you experienced the cold face of development from a very young age. What made you focus on landscaping, architecture and horticulture initially, Bryn?
Well, thank you for having me on first, ladies. Looking forward to sharing some insights and hopefully some inspiration to everyone. It's great first question. Yeah, I think for me, obviously development, I guess, is in my DNA. Growing up from a very early age, just watching my dad and my granddad mainly actively, working on sites. My granddad was a qualified bricklayer from an early age, as was my dad. Being honest with you, I don't really know what it was specifically that kind of pushed me down the path of landscape architecture, more the outside kind of spaces, the outside world, as opposed to, just following in the footsteps initially of, the first and second generation. But I guess, family has been a big thing for me over the years. We've been blessed by, having a lot of involvement with, not just my parents, but with my grandparents as well on both sides of my family. And I think maybe part of it was that I often used to go on trips and things like that to, country estates, stately homes, national trust places like that. And I've got no doubt that probably added a bit of an influence in terms of some of my choices in kind of the later life when it's coming to the decision of, what to do, essentially. I've never really been somebody to follow the herd, as it were. Obviously in school, a lot of my friends, take the normal path of either going to a sixth form college or taking up an apprenticeship or something like that. And I went completely against the grain of that by going to, a specialist college for, basically doing gardens and things like that, which, as you can imagine, as a sort of 15, 16-year-old lad, was a bit kind of an anomaly, really. But I've always had an interest in design and taking something and changing it for the better. That obviously brings brings about, you know, good experiences for the individual or the people that are going to use it. And it just so happened that like landscaping and things like that were kind of the path that I chose, really. But yeah, it wasn't too long until kind of got almost reeled back in towards the family business, and the rest is history.
So even for the short time you were in it, I've actually been lucky enough to see some of your designs on paper, and they're pretty impressive. So they do give you solid foundations when you're doing your new build to actually differentiate your property from the outside in, making the drive up impressive, making standout features, drawing on that knowledge that you can add to the quality of development knowledge that you're kind of like gaining, accruing, and bringing to the business as well. So it is actually another USP that you can add to your business to give you that standout factor, isn't it? So it is a great foundation.
Yeah, I think it's like anything. You can bring you know, the principles and the processes from any kind of industry, however close or far away from property or property development that is, and apply that, you know, in some form. I mean, for me, the whole experience of going through the kind of design process, briefs, delivering, you know, contracts, actually, you know, the physical process of creating things, you know, and delivering on what you say you're going to deliver has obviously held me in good stead, and helped my foundations, I guess, and reinforce my foundations going forward into more the kind of house building industry. I was very lucky to have some great experiences in kind of that space as well. I designed some spaces for the BBC, went to Gardeners World Live, won an RHS medal. So a lot of that, you know, is good character building. It's good experience as well. And albeit I don't necessarily use those specific skills on a day-to-day basis when it comes to, you know, schemes and things like that. As I said, the process between idea to, you know, that concept to, you know, fleshing out, you know, designs and then making those things a reality has definitely helped, you know, in what we're doing at the moment, certainly.
Yeah, so pretty impressive, pretty impressive. So fast forward back into your actual physical property development focus. What would you say to date is your biggest success and why?
You know what, for me, I can't really pin it down to a specific success because it's something that we live and breathe. We're you know, we're you know, in fact, we operate best at the intersection of family and business. So it's something that is just ingrained in everything that we do every day. So I think from a success point of view, it's a combination of kind of the things that we have been doing over the last probably 5 or 6 years that have and the kind of compounding effect that those have had, rather than it being a specific deal or something like that. What I tend to focus on in terms of evaluating whether something has been successful or not isn't about the money that's made. It's not about the size of deal or maybe how many you know, how many followers you might have or anything, you know, of that nature. It's actually what kind of value it brings to an impact it brings to the people that are actively, you know, involved in the process. So our exploits over the last 5 or 6 years through property, through the networks and meeting people like yourselves and working with a lot more people than we used to, has led us to some amazing things. You know, our initial focus about 5 or 6 years ago was to try and upgrade the kind of lives of our family members, my sisters, people like that. So we managed to get some property and some projects for them. You know, it's enabled me to you know, have the liquidity to pay for things like our wedding, myself and my wife's wedding, and our honeymoon. And now that I've got a little boy of my own, it's you know, being able to have the time. You know, over the last 5 or 6 years, if I wouldn't have built up the business that we have, I wouldn't be able to do some of the things in terms of, you know, having time off and time out and really spending quality time with the people that I care about. So we're involved in some great projects as well, and we've obviously met some fantastic people along the way. But it's more about, I focus on the impact, you know. So
Now, I think that's a brilliant answer, and it's lovely to hear because you guys do come from solid foundations, and it is about having the right morals, thinking about the value you bring to the community, etc., etc. And it's so refreshing to hear that, and hearing that pound signs aren't your primary focus all the time. Of course, they need to be in there, but it's a brilliant answer. So actually, carrying on in that vein, can you tell us a bit about projects maybe that didn't go to plan, lessons you learned, and how you dealt with it?
Yeah, obviously, a lot of our experience in terms of the kind of 3,000 units that we've over 3,000 units that we've built to date have been mainly through, you know, the first and second generation. My personal kind of involvement in most recently in some of the projects, I guess some of the mistakes and some of the failures, I guess, that have helped. Is understanding the reality of the industry is the biggest thing for me. Obviously, there's one thing looking at it from afar, you know, growing up and seeing, you know, my grandfather and my father, you know, actively involved in it, but it's actually getting down into the nitty gritty and understanding what the difference is between perception and reality. So things like dealing with the legal process, you know, and the time that takes and the scrutiny that you have to go through to try and get a deal over the line, for example. We've worked, I work within our own business. I'm very much acquisition focused. So my area of expertise and is in and around connecting with landowners, and managing that process, putting deals together and managing that process all the way through to kind of securing the deal, really. So my best lessons have been in and around that kind of area. And some of the best lessons have been, you know, spending too much time on any particular project before you've got validation at different stages. So you're always looking to get continual buy-in from you know, the major stakeholders within the process. And we've definitely spent too much time on certain scenarios and certain opportunities where actually, if we trust the process, if it doesn't meet a certain expectation, then, you know, you draw a line through it and you move on. And obviously, the longer you spend on something, the more emotionally you're involved in it. And then you're also often spending a lot of money on things as well. So it's about understanding what is expected of you and what you're likely to achieve, really. That's been most helpful for me anyway.
No, that's a really good answer, really good. So traditionally, your business developed out and sold, but I happen to know now that obviously you're looking at multiple exits, but possibly with a view to holding, and you're also looking at social housing. So would you like to tell us a bit more about that and why you're focusing on that right now?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's for us, it's been a benefit of having multi-generation in the business. So you've got people, you know, myself and my father are directors of our company. We often come at things from a slightly different perspective. As you said, you know, traditionally we've been traders of property, never, and in fact, I think my dad never had a mortgage until about 4 years ago. And that you just built and sold. And I think, you know, this day and age, I think different generations look at things in maybe a slightly different way. So from my perspective, it is looking at the long term and looking more at the legacy. Obviously with myself having a little boy as well. So it's about putting things in place, building up assets that has led me to sort of push in a certain direction in terms of exit strategies. We're looking at we've got many different projects on the desk at the moment, and it's important to be able to, you know, structure them so you can exit at different points as and when required. You know, diversification is absolutely key to managing risk. And we're looking, you know, I don't think we'll ever go too far away from the trader background, because I think that's ingrained in us. But we're certainly devoting some time and some resource to a build to hold strategy for certain projects, perhaps not projects that are too far away from us. So obviously location is key. for us. We work all over the country, so location might also dictate our exit as well. So anything that's fairly local to us within Shropshire, for example, we may look at that in a slightly different way. Any projects that we might be working on in Somerset or in other areas that we work in, we perhaps might not look to hold on to a couple of units on a development. So that's definitely a factor. We're involved in a lot of strategic sites at the moment as well. So planning uplift is a strategy that we are actively pursuing. But with the proviso that in all of our kind of promotion agreements or option agreements where we're looking at making some money on the planning side, we're also putting clauses in those contracts to ensure that we've got the chance to then buy that site as well to build out and sort of have second bite of the cherry, as it were. So it's kind of free phase really. But my own personal outlook on things is I'd quite like a portfolio. To build up of single lets over a period of time. So that's definitely a focus of mine within our exits.
And I think that makes perfect sense because, as you said, creating sustainable wealth, both for now and for the future. And so you've got that legacy slowly being built safely over time. And I know lifestyle is really important for you as well, as it is for us. So is there such a thing as a typical day for you, and what does it look like?
Well, I certainly think a typical day in the current climate is a bit different to normal. But I think for me, obviously, with as I said before, we're a family business, so a lot of it is intertwined. So a typical day for me, certainly with my little boy Leo, now is looking after him. In the mornings, getting into the office around 9, and we have regular team meetings on a daily basis, even if we're working from home or working remotely. So it's just checking in with the team, identifying some of the key objectives that we want to achieve as a company and as individuals in the week ahead. And sort of discussing, what requirements are needed from the rest of the team members in order to make that happen. A lot of what I do, as I said, is very front end focused. So it is in the acquisition. So a lot of my day-to-day activities, if they're not, if we're not in an acquisition phase, so if we're not actively putting letters out there and fielding responses and booking in meetings, which I quite often do, for me it is about taking some of the opportunities that we've got on the desk at the moment and, appraising them, running the numbers, liaising with some of the major stakeholders, whether that be investors or landowners themselves, getting updates on where we are in terms of progress. Because I think, as I said, I'm more the client side, but if we've got projects that are in planning or a bit further down the line where perhaps I don't have as much involvement, it's my job to keep the landowners and the vendors informed as to how we're going. So yes, a lot of calls and emails and mainly around communication. I'm fortunate enough that I can have some time off in the middle of the day to spend a bit more time with Leo as well. So that breaks the day up for me. And we spread the working hours across really 6 or 7 days as opposed to a kind of a 5-day working week. So I have time off periodically rather than say, 2 days off at the weekend. So yeah, typically work into kind of what you'd normally say, sort of 5:30. Then yeah, it's back to family life with Sarah and Leo. And quite often when I put him to bed, I'm back on the computer and doing much of the same really.
And that's brilliant, being able to live it how you want on your terms. And of course, I know you've got other family who provide services, value add services very related to your business. For example, on the appraisal side, you've got your sister and brother-in-law working, and you've got another sister working on lots of the administration side earlier on in the process. And they're all experts in their field. So that brings it all together. So you've got the total trust there, which is fabulous. And it allows you to build that family lifestyle business. So we talked about you wanting to build, sustainable wealth, both for now and the future. Have you laid down your big 4 to 6 strategic goals for the next 3 to 5 years, or is that not something you really do?
Um, it's a really good goal setting. Is a really good topic, I think, because I think it works really well for certain people, and for others, I don't think it seems to have as much of an impact. For me, I kind of flip between the two, if I'm being honest. If there's something absolutely specific that I want to achieve, that I want, then obviously having that specific goal is really kind of helpful. Generally, where I feel that we work best as a family. Certainly this was probably where my dad and myself kind of share a similar outlook, is more than, rather than maybe specific goal, it's heading in a certain direction. So for example, it could be, yes, I want to develop and build and hold on to property to have my own portfolio. I don't know how many properties that is, so it's not a specific goal. I don't know what, typically what value that's going to be. I don't typically know what portfolio value that will have, but I do have a general kind of direction that I'm headed, that in the sense that I want to build up a portfolio of my own, of single lets that aren't very highly geared, so maybe 50 to 60% loan to value, to create that buffer, solid kind of returns that aren't going to be too susceptible to kind of market movements should things change. I don't know whether it's going to be 5 or 10 or 20, but I know that that's the kind of direction that we're headed in. So anything where we're dealing with projects that may fit those requirements, then obviously that's when I'd perhaps look at something like that in a bit more detail. Other than that, for me, it is about sustainable wealth. So I'd like to be in a position in probably 4 to 6 years' time where I've got assets that are bringing in income, maybe not just property assets, but other assets as well. I just like the idea of having something that you can set up or you can invest in that produces an income over time. And self-build of the kind of dream home is always high on the agenda.
I know for a long time. We've spoken about that several times. Yeah,
certainly. I think it's certainly a big goal for many people, to be honest with you. Certainly within the property industry, where we're living at the moment is great. So that's probably the next goal, is to make this place our kind of next step dream home, I guess, and then step onto the big self build, hopefully. But for me, it's, as I said, it's more about it's less about specific goals for me, and it's more about the kind of just enjoying the process, and ensuring that the goals are aligned with kind of my values, really, which is obviously family, friends, enjoyment, and everything. So I don't want to be one of these people that works hammer and nail constantly to kind of focus on the future, on these goals, on these specific targets, and then by doing so forget about and almost miss the here and now. So it is about finding that balance for me.
No, that is a really good point and a great answer. I'm now going to touch on something I know is really close to your heart and to Richard's and to other members of your family, and that's the property development long game, and how too many people think you can make big bucks overnight, risk everything. Some do okay just by luck more than anything else. And let's discuss that, and let's talk about your view on this, and then we'll delve into some other aspects of this. But there are many people out there encouraging people to risk it all with development without the substance, and themselves without the development experience to actually deliver the training. So let's discuss this in a bit more detail. I know you've rescued many projects. I don't obviously need any names or specifics, but it's been a big frustration of yours, right?
Yeah, certainly. I think being involved in a kind of education industry, property education industry, for 5 or 6 years has certainly opened our eyes into, because of the fact that it's unregulated. You can get anybody and everybody that's good at marketing effectively could fill a room full of people, and anybody that's fairly decent at speaking and presenting can have a lot of influence over a lot of people. some of our main frustrations are in and around the fact that you know, that a lot of people do play down development. You know, you can make a lot of money from development. It is very rewarding if you get it right, but it's like anything. If it's something where you can generate a lot of money and you can have a lot of reward, then it comes with an equal or greater amount of risk as well. So it's something that I think doesn't get spoke about enough, is the other side of the coin with regards, certainly with regards to development and quite possibly with regards to other property sort of training and property strategies, I guess. So for me, it's I don't think it's anything that can potentially become regulated. I know there's talk of a need or a want for that, yeah, for me, the main frustration is that many people that are good marketers can often win more business or actually get involved with people and lead people down a path in comparison to those that have actually got genuine experience that perhaps aren't so good at marketing.
No, that's, you know, a great point. And so the advice would be, do your due diligence on their background and the substance on what they're delivering.
Yeah, certainly. I think from an experience point of view, we always say to people that if you're going to align yourselves with somebody, whether that's working with somebody in a joint venture or getting consultancy or mentorship from somebody or attending some training or whatever that may be, or even investing your money into their projects, it's about understanding how long they've been in the business, firstly, and whether they're risking their own money. Because when somebody is risking their own money, it's a completely different mindset to risking other people's, in my opinion. You see it a lot on social media of doing developments with none of your own money. And I think the real professional people in the industry, because you know, it's not just the people in property networks and on Facebook that actually make up probably 80 or 90% of the development and housing industry, right? A lot of people just go about their business. They don't attend training courses or have mentors or anything. They just get on with it and they do it. If they were to look at that and see that these people are advertising that you can do development with none of your own money, you know, what message is that actually saying? It's more of a message to get people to go to your course, for example, rather than getting people to invest in you, which is quite interesting for me. So I would say that, you know, you've got to align yourself with somebody that's probably been through at least one boom bust economic cycle. So anybody that's been in the industry post 2008, 2009 haven't experienced a downturn yet, although there's probably one imminently. They haven't experienced it themselves yet. So how do you know that the systems and the processes and the operations that they have in their own business are robust enough that what they're teaching you is going to enable you to survive in the industry as well? So the more experience, the better, really.
That's a great answer. So what would you say is the best piece of advice you've ever been given? And the second question related to that, are there any specific habits you have now that you wish you'd had when you first started out?
I mean, I've been very lucky enough to have received a lot of good advice over the years, obviously from my granddad and my dad. One of the sayings that sticks out in my mind from my granddad, he always used to say, do a nice lot, which I guess it is translated to, you know, always putting your all into something, always doing the best that you can, which is something that's always at the forefront of my mind anyway. It's, you know, you're thinking about what the tasks that you're in the middle of, or a deal that you're trying to put together, or anything, just a general principle of life, really. It's, yeah, to go out there and just do a nice lot. I think from some of the best advice that I've gleaned from my dad mainly is about trying to stay as level as you can, trying to remove as much emotion from decisions when they're related to, you know, deals and things like that, because you know, along the process, you are going to become frustrated multiple times, and it is stressful. And if you can take a step back and you can remove yourself and just look at it from a logical perspective, then that's often the best way that you're going to come up with the right decision to move forward, because there is a tendency to want to act emotionally and immediately, and that's not often the best thing to do. Sometimes it is, but you've got to make sure that that's a conscious decision that you're making. So it's about taking a step back, taking a breath, assessing the situation, and then making a considered decision. I think that's one of the main things I've got from my dad mainly.
That's really great. So moving on to tools and resources you utilize during your property development kind of journey and, you know, on a daily basis, are there any specific go-to tools that you would thoroughly recommend? It could be a spreadsheet. I know you like Google Maps, for example. You're not a big fan of some of the more traditional tools people use because their information isn't always up to date, for example. What would be your advice? What are the go-to tool sets that you find so useful to help you?
I think anything that can help you with communication within your team, and perhaps with external consultants as well, it is great. And that might be different for different people, because obviously there's different software out there, there's different ways of communicating. So it's about, you know, finding something that works well for your style of communication. For us, we use project management and communication tools like Trello, for example. We manage all of our pipeline through acquisition and through some of our projects on Trello. You never go too far away from the trusty spreadsheet. For us, it's something that we're always evolving as well. We're by no means spreadsheet experts ourselves, but we do know, you know, what information that we want to pull through on our various appraisal spreadsheets that we have. So we're fans of building something that works for you when it comes to a spreadsheet as well. We see a lot of people sort of asking for deal analyzers and wanting to use other people's systems and software, which is great if you want to use it as a reference point, in my opinion. But I think there's nothing like working with something that you've put together, because you know how it works, you know how it interacts, you know how to read the information to make sure that you're not missing anything. So I'm always tinkering and iterating our sort of spreadsheets. Other than that, you mentioned Google Maps. So there's a lot of online tools these days that you can use. There's a lot of paid software that you can use in terms of like Land Insight and Nimbus and mapping systems like that. But in our experience, the tendency is that if you're paying for something, you expect it all to be 100% accurate. Or if you're using software, for example, you expect what you're looking at to be 100% accurate when it's not always the case. So for us, a lot of the information is out there on planning portals, on mapping, on land registry, on environment agency websites. So it's about weighing up whether it's a time saver for you to have it all in one place versus the cost. But then it's, once you've kind of done that, it's then validating that information to make sure that it's correct and you haven't missed anything.
No, that's really useful. I think I'm probably going to be able to guess the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask you it nonetheless. So people mention about their network and power team being critical to their success. Now, if there was one member of your so-called power team you couldn't live without, who would that be and why?
Well, if you think you know the answer, Karen, I'll suggest that you give it a stab yourself.
I would guess you're going to say your father. I could be wrong.
Yeah, it's but yeah, no surprise there, really, to be honest with you. Don't know where we'd be, really, to be honest, without him. With his kind of sage advice that he gives on a daily basis, his experience, his level-headedness, his kind of giving nature as well. For me, growing up with watching him work tremendously hard to provide for the family, it is a constant source of inspiration, really. So for me, it's a resource that, yeah, certainly can't live without. And to that point, really, for other people, for me, it's about having somebody of experience that's able to look over your shoulder and just be that sounding board and be that voice of reason. As I said before, it's about often taking the logical view rather than the emotional response. So having somebody that's perhaps not as connected to the business and the deals as you will help you look at things from a completely different perspective. I guess it's very akin to the old phrase of, you can't see the wood for the trees. If you're too close to something, you can't necessarily see any other options. So having somebody that I would say a development consultant rather than somebody with a specific trade, as it were, or specialism, because a lead developer and an experienced developer has an oversight and an overview and experience of the whole process. So they're able to kind of guide you in many different ways, whereas somebody like a planning consultant is very specific and specialist to planning. Architects very specific and specialist to design. But if you can align yourself with a development consultant, they can kind of steer you in the right direction across the whole spectrum, really. And obviously Richard has done that for me and continues to do that. And they're big shoes to fill, to be honest.
But you're getting there, and it's great because obviously Richard did that, or Richard's father did that, and then Richard grew into the shoes, and you're still very young, and you're growing more into those shoes as the years progress on. And it's a brilliant family business to have, where it's evolved multi-generationally, and the knowledge is being passed down and being refined and growing and being enriched generation by generation. It's fabulous. No, that's a really great answer. So do you have a favorite book for people just getting started in development that you'd point them at to give them some foundation, really, and read up on the topic?
Well, probably without being biased, I'd probably point them to our book, the House Building Handbook. It's a mini book, if you like. You could probably read it within a couple of hours. Takes you through the 7 stages of the development process, and it really does highlight throughout each section some of the risks involved and ways of mitigating those risks. It's so that's probably one. Other industry books specifically related to development, I'll be honest, I haven't really felt the need to read too many books, because I've got a living, breathing development encyclopedia, if you like, with Richard. So for me, I don't necessarily have that many recommendations. I read a lot of business books, or rather listen to a lot of business books that have certainly helped, because I think that's one side in terms of learning the technicalities of a particular strategy or an industry, but there's also the kind of underlying business foundations that are as important within most industries.
No, that's a great answer. And if somebody was interested in that book, how could they get hold of a copy?
So yeah, House Building Handbook. We just got an ebook version, so I'll be able to provide a link. I can circulate with you guys. The link will be within our Facebook group on the House Building business community. There'll be also a link on our website as well, Property Developers Academy. It is physical copy of the books available on Amazon at the moment for $6.99. So yeah, head over to there and you'll be able to get yourself a copy.
And also something else you're doing right now, you're giving great value away daily with small videos. So again, those are available on your Facebook page, right?
Yeah, we I don't know where it came from really, but we decided to commit to 100 days of property development knowledge and tips and insights within our Facebook group, House Building Business Community. And I think we're at day number 60 today, actually. So anybody that goes onto the group can go back and watch 60 videos. We do them Facebook Live every single day. And it's, again, they're related to business and then related to the development process as well. And we've obviously got another 40 to go. So yeah, it's quite a big commitment of ourselves, really. But yeah, I think we're in the middle of planning at the moment, which is Richard's area of expertise. So you'll probably find him online for the last few videos and the next few.
No, that's brilliant, and it's really generous of you guys to give that away for free, because that, as you say, takes a lot of your time. So over now to Sam and Sarah. So shall I start with you, Sam? Have you got any questions for Bryn?
Yes, thank you. Really useful insights there so far, Bryn. Really appreciate that. Awesome. Couple of questions I had, just to put some perspective on things. What's the sort of ratio of deals that you need to appraise before you actually get through to one that you will think, well, this is interesting and I want to take it a little bit further? How many are you sort of disregarding? What's the kind of ratio there?
It's a really good question. It's a good metric to, throughout your business, it's important to look at different metrics to see, whether your processes are working or not, or whether your expectations are in alignment with what actually is reality or not. It's a lot more, I can guarantee you it's a lot more than people hope for. I don't know specifically in terms of exact numbers, but I know that last acquisition cycle that we went through, we sent out in approximately 3,000 letters. That's probably led to about 6 or 7 deals. But from a prospect to deal ratio is a lot different to what we would then consider more of a qualified prospect to deal ratio, if that makes sense. So we can have a general big net that we cast, and that number is obviously quite a big number in comparison to the deals that we do, but the appraisal process that we have in place is designed to get to the decision of no quickly. So we might send out 3,000, we might get maybe a 10%, say we got a 10% response rate. We're then dealing with 300 inquiries. And out of those 300 inquiries, we're then, only a few of them will get past that level 1, if you like, filter, and then level 2 filter, and then level 3. And at each point, we're making sure that we don't spend as much, unnecessary time and resource on deals that aren't really going to materialize. So yeah, I guess if you're, if you get in 20 or 30 or 40 on your desk that are, pretty good and got pretty, good things going for them, then the likelihood is you're going to find a deal in there somewhere, I would say.
That's really handy to sort of manage people's expectations about how long it takes to actually find a deal that fits your criteria. It's probably the most important part of the process in many respects, because people, in our experience, people don't spend enough time doing it, or they don't want to do it and they want somebody else to do it. And as soon as you're getting somebody else to do it, you haven't got the control. So for us, it's almost like looking at how many the activity that you're doing now within your kind of sourcing exploits and times in it by 10 or 20 to really give yourself the chance, instead of sending 20 letters out. If you really want to succeed at it, you've got to be consistent. So you've got to send out 200 and you've got to keep going. And the impression I'm getting there is that you mainly focus on direct to vendor rather than working with agents.
Yeah, traditionally we have. In our experiences, the best deals come direct with owners. The key is that you've got two markets really. You've got what I call active prospects and dormant prospects. So active prospects are those that are actively trying to sell their asset. So they would be advertising through agents or sources or whatever that may be, intermediaries. But then you've got the dormant prospects that perhaps aren't actively advertising, but they may be thinking about it or they'd be interested in talking to somebody about it. And that kind of that area, that those prospects far exceed, the active ones. So if you can target those, then you've got more to play with, and you've got more of a chance and less competition. So we've always dealt with them. We've probably done over 250 landowner deals, or dealt with 250 landowners for deals in the past. But that being said, at the moment, we are getting some good opportunities coming on the desk through some agents as well. So it's not neglecting one or the other, but it's perhaps having a focus or a bias towards one than the other for us. So some good opportunities that are going to come through some agents at the moment, because obviously to the general public, they are the experts, right? They're the people that a landowner typically would go to sell their asset. And we fully suspect there to be a lot of that over the next sort of couple of quarters, really.
And you mentioned a couple of land search tools. Do you use them at all, or you still?
We used to. We used to use Nimbus maps, but we got to a point where it wasn't really serving the purpose that we wanted it to, or that it had served its purpose, rather, to be honest. We'd used it, we'd sourced a lot of opportunities, but the thing is, once you've identified a lot of opportunities, a new opportunity isn't going to magic itself out of nowhere. There might be new opportunities in terms of existing buildings and things like that, but the way that we search for land and opportunities is so that we'll pick an area and we'll find as many opportunities in that area as possible. So once you've identified them, it's then just taking that through the process, really. So we did use those kind of tools previously. It certainly helps the team as well, but it's getting to the point where you're able then to do that freely, effectively, with things like Google Maps and land registry services and the planning portal, and just spending perhaps a little bit more time doing it. But there seems to be a tendency at the moment to try and do things as quick as possible and as convenient as possible. And I think if certain things are put to you on a plate, as it were, then you get into this habit of not having to work hard to find out the information, and you miss out on the learning of finding that information. So for me and for the team, it's quite good going through. It might take you twice as long, but it's quite good going through the portals, going through the various websites to find information, because you're actually learning how to navigate that as well. So if things were to happen where you needed to do that, you're able to do it.
Some valid points there. Thanks, Bryn. Yeah. Sarah, have you got some questions?
Yeah, before we went online, we were talking a bit about Corona and how that's changed things, shaped family life for you. Is there any ways in which Corona has kind of affected the business or changed your plans and goals going forward?
Really great question, obviously, with very topical question, with where we are at with things. I think obviously a lot of industries have been affected by it, more so perhaps than our industry, or certainly our own business in our day-to-day workings, because a lot of the stuff that we're working on at the moment is more strategic, a bit more long-term. Then there isn't such of a knee-jerk reaction. What it has affected for us in terms of our business operations is that obviously affects the supply chain. So people that we're dealing with, all the way through from landowners that may have their own businesses that may have changed in terms of their motivation and their need to either get things done or cancel things or whatever that may be, to the legal side with people working from home, planning departments and people on furlough and everything like that, from all your specialists that you need. So it has certainly affected the supply chain, which has probably had a knock-on effect in terms of timescales. But in the grand scheme of things, on projects that we're working on at the moment, it hasn't been too adversely affected. It's about communicating that to the major stakeholders, investors, landowners, because they're aware of it as well. Obviously, but if you ignore the situation, then obviously that's when things can be adversely affected for you personally. But so that's one thing. certainly that hasn't really helped, but it's about having a business and processes in place where you can kind of evolve with the times, really, because that's the one thing we can't control is external and the market and things like that. So it's certainly changed how we're moving forward in terms of some of the deals that we're doing. We're putting much more fluid deal structures in place to account for market movements. Depending on who you listen to and the research that they've gone into, you know, some people are saying that GDVs and values could fall up to 10% in certain areas. And if you take 10% off of your appraisals at the moment, what does that do to kind of the land values that you're working with? So it's changed in the respect of we put fluid deal structures in place anyway, but it's certainly put more of a focus on erring on the side of caution, but putting things in place that if the market was to maintain or even increase, then everybody's going to see the benefit of it.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question, actually. Your pipeline going forward and how that's affected the landscape of the offers that you're making now, which you've already answered. But so you're putting a lot more flexibility into those offers going forward, basically, and more exit strategies. Is that what you mean by fluid?
Certainly, the ability to exit. It's affected, not that we weren't looking at deals of this nature anyway, but certainly the types of deals that you're looking to get involved with. We're very much bread and butter 2 and 3 bedroom family homes, which obviously opens up exit routes in terms of selling or retaining. Whereas a lot of people might be interested in doing maybe 4 and 5 bed executive homes on a sale basis, but actually if the market does change, then they're going to be in a position where they perhaps can't refinance or can't retain them because of the kind of stress testing and the yields and everything. So it's certainly reinforced, maybe not affected, but it's certainly reinforced our desire to stick to 2 and 3 bedroom family homes in and around the kind of affordable end of the market. Flexibility in terms of playing with values, really. So we're using things like overage clauses in our contracts where we agree a baseline value of, say, 400,000 when there's every chance that the land might be worth 800,000, but we can't commit to it right now because we don't know what the market's going to do. So we agree a baseline value and we'll share any of the uplift or the overage of values achieved over a certain amount. So, you might have 75 or 80% of it going to the landowner and 20% of it going to us, which obviously covers our costs and things like that. And that way everybody wins. So at the moment, it's about trying to convey that in the right way to landowners so that they can understand the reason why you're putting that in place, and not that you want to get the land on the cheap, as it were. You're trying to put something in place that deals with factors that aren't in your control, but also, delivers on as much value as possible depending on what happens.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
No, that's been really, really useful. Do we have any questions from anyone listening in right now?
We've had a couple of questions. So someone's asking if you do you only obtain land for yourself, or do you look for land for other people as well?
Predominantly, we obtain land for ourselves and our partners that we work with. Depending on obviously locations, if it's in areas that we're probably already resourced, then that we only have a certain capacity for projects ourselves. So we do have the odd occasion where land does come up that perhaps might not work for us specifically, that we look to pass on. It's something that we've never really focused on to do as an active business operation. We've considered it over the last couple of years, but it goes back to the whole thing I was saying about that area is probably one of the most important. It's certainly the most important if you haven't got a pipeline in place already. So it's just something that I would advocate, if you can resource it in-house if possible.
Great, thank you. Chris Brown has put a comment about, I bet you're unhappy about Corona's effect on the cricket season.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we've had many a conversation in a Holiday Inn bar, if I remember rightly, when he attended a couple of our courses a few years back. So thanks for that, Chris. Yeah, it's very frustrating. It'd be good to have something to watch on the telly next month anyway. But not missing it so much from the playing side, because obviously I get to spend my weekends with my little boy, so that's good.
No, that's been absolutely brilliant, Bryn. Fabulous. So if people want to find out more about you and connect with you, how can they do that?
Probably best in terms of social media is Facebook. There's not too many Brynley Littles in the world, I don't imagine. So if you just put Brynley Little into the search bar, I guess you'll come up with my my profile. Just add me on there. I mentioned before about our Facebook group, the House Building Business Community. Tons of value in there. Lots of people in there as well to connect with. So yeah, apply to join that group, and we'll accept you into there. Email. Other than that, email is probably the best way to reach me. So it's Bryn, Bryn at yourlandpartner.co.uk. Be the best one to reach me on.
That's fabulous. And if perhaps as well, you could drop that in the chat afterwards, just so that we can then add it to the thread. And
No
I'd like to thank you again for your time. It's been really fabulous.
No problem at all. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much for having me on, and yeah, look forward to catching up with you guys soon.
Thanks, Bryn. And thanks everyone. Have a great day, and bye for now. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.